Next guest, Executive Director of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, Patrick Hedger, back on the program. Patrick, how about it? People think there's always yin-yang, black-white, left or right. You got this answer or that answer. Mine's more in the middle. Instead of saying it's solely up to the parents, you don't regulate or touch social media, that's the open public square for free speech, blah, 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 which we know is not true. Or we go the other route, the government steps in, we need some serious regulations and strict rules to make sure our kids are safe. I don't think most conservatives or Republicans want that either. So how about in the middle, where you put pressure, and I don't know if that's on tax breaks for these big companies or something, but you put pressure to make them do what's right, just like other companies do have restrictions, regulations, safeguards that protect us, we the people, the consumer. But I want to hear your take, Patrick.
Yeah, absolutely. This is such a difficult question. It's a really difficult issue to talk about because I think we all agree that the people that are doing actually creating this material ought to be buried under the jail. That said, I think
agree on that,
yeah, absolutely. But my concern is, as I started to study this issue, I've got a couple concerns. The first is, and I think you've alluded to this, what we're talking about here fundamentally are platforms that facilitate speech. And so when you introduce regulation, you have a very high First Amendment burden that the government needs to clear. And then there are also concerns with these proposals that you could have regulations put in place that would harm privacy online. So there are tools that protect privacy, that protect the good guys, and they also protect the bad guys. So there's a huge concern there. What I'm really concerned about, though, is when I started studying this issue, I found that in 2008 there was a law that was passed, and it was actually Senator Joe Biden's legislation that was signed into law by George W. Bush that directed the Department of Justice to set up a task force to deal with child sexual abuse material online. Mm-hmm. And the Government Accountability Office recently found that the Department of Justice has not made utilizing the programs and the funding under that law a priority. That's almost a direct quote from the GAO's report. And so while I think there's certainly some scrutiny that is warranted on the tech companies, I wonder when the hearing is going to be for the Department of Justice for the fact that it has been found that they have not made combating this problem a priority. Because all we're talking
Patrick,
about...
we know, sorry to interrupt, but we know why. Because for 3 years, they've been going after January 6 people. I've already had FBI whistleblowers in this program say, listen, they've diverted funds, they've diverted people, they've taken air marshals off of planes. They're putting all the DOJ, FBI, air marshal investigators on Jan 6 people, and they've literally pulled FBI agents and DOJ folks off of investigations going after sexual predators that can help protect our kids. That's what's happening. That's a fact.
Yeah, it's certainly, there's a certain... when the GAO is telling you you're not making something a priority, that's damning stuff, especially when it's something that is this severe. I think this is probably easily classified as one of the worst criminal enterprises that we see happen.
Yes.
So I think that there needs to be a focus here, and I want to see Congress going forward. I think right now, because of the severity of this problem, there is a strong incentive to go to the extremes and do everything that's possible. And while I certainly get that, you may end up harming systems and protections that are in place that actually protect kids online, like end-to-end encryption, pseudonymous accounts, things like that can protect people from stalkers. People rightfully criticized Ambassador Haley when she suggested she wanted everybody to use their real names on social media. And some of the bills that we were talking about today at this hearing would actually empower the Department of Justice to force everybody to use their real names on social media. So I really worry about those kinds of infringements on civil liberties, because those will harm as many people as expect.
Yep, so do I. I agree. I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying I want the federal government to step in and regulate my free speech on social media. Trust me. I think you know me and the viewers know me. I don't want that. What I'm saying is on the sexual exploitation of kids, okay, and I agree with what you said right at the beginning of this. Look, somebody sends my kid some penis pictures or tries to kidnap my kid and put her into sexual, whatever it may be, any of that sick stuff, yeah, I'll handle that one. We'll bury him under the basement. I agree with you. But How do we pressure these CEOs like Mr. Zuckerberg, who now is a family man, to put those safety measures in place? And then, as you said, we need to put pressure on our federal law enforcement to go after these sick perverts. There shouldn't be regulation the government has to put in place that would stifle free speech. I agree with you 100%. Because if we don't see people's hate speech online, you won't be able to identify who the jerk is that's either a sick pervert or a racist piece of trash. So I want the free speech, but we got to have some safeguards. Like I said with the FAA, we have safeguards when you fly, right? You and I sit down, we buckle up, and we trust that the federal government made sure there's something in place to make sure that pilot's trained so he doesn't kill me, you, and my family. So why can't we put something in place to make sure that Zuckerberg and the rest of these clowns at social media corporate headquarters are putting something in place to make sure my kid doesn't get you know what kind of pics or kidnapped by some sex ring? That's all I'm looking for. Protect the kids, damn it. Final word to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we need to see is some sort of private consortium come together like we saw with the Motion Picture Association.
There you go.
That was actually the rating system is a voluntary rating system. We saw the same thing with video games, ESRB. That's a voluntary system where best practices are put in place, because I get the impetus of wanting to have like an FAA type agency to regulate safety online. But what that will turn into is exactly what we saw during COVID, which is a progressive administration saying what needs to be taken down from social media. That's the big concern there.
Great point.
Where
So
they're going
some
to
sort
use
of
the
independent
guise of protecting kids online to stifle free speech. I think we want to empower law enforcement, invest in law enforcement to go after the bad guys, and then encourage private best practices.
That's great. I love that idea. Now, can you get into the halls of Congress and get those idiots to pay attention? Let's hope.
We're working on it.
Thank you. Patrick Hedger, Executive Director of Taxpayers Protection Alliance. Thank you, sir, for coming on and breaking this down. As I said, it's a difficult discussion to have, but it needs to be had for the safety of our kids. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Yep.